All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining the session. I will try to be quick. Yes, so as mentioned, I will talk about how do we do open source selection in Nokia and how do we use Scorecard for that. And yes, I'm Gergely Csatari. I'm working for the OSPO of Nokia. I have a couple of roles there, one of them being like doing OSPO-related things like policies and this kind of boring things. Then I'm also part of a couple of communities, mostly doing community management or documentation, because in our OSPO we think that like the OSPO's main role is to help others to contribute to open source. And I'm also the cloud/cloud native person in our team, because in our team everybody has a technology domain what we need to follow. So these are the basically three main areas where I am active. And as you can see, one of my hobbies is freeride snowboarding, and I like yellow jackets. Yes, so yesterday I had another presentation and I had the exact same slide on top of it, but I think this is like the slide which is present in every presentation. And basically what this slide tries to show is that there is no software without open source, or there is no software technology without open source. Everything has open source. And all the products are consuming a huge amount of open source. So we have to have some kind of methodologies to deal with the security risks posed by the open source projects what we consume. And we are using a couple of, let's say, filters to filter out the open source what we consume. And obviously we have a compliance process, so we are basically checking the licenses and running an inbound compliance. We also have a security compliance, as the previous presentation mentioned, that there are lots of vulnerabilities in these open source projects. We need to figure out what vulnerabilities do affect us, and we have to like act accordingly. Like Nokia is, of course, a vendor of critical infrastructure, so we have to be very careful about what kind of vulnerabilities we let into our products. So we have very, very thorough processes for that. And the new thing what we just introduced in last year is an open source security risk. It is basically checking the operability risk of open source projects, meaning that how the open source project can react if there is a security vulnerability in the project. Is the project maintained? Are they handling security vulnerabilities? Is it possible to contribute the vulnerability fix to the project and this kind of things? So this is like a very complex problem. It has like many factors, starting from like having contributors. So if an open source project doesn't have any contributors, they will not be able to merge the security fix even if that is provided. So that's the basic thing what an open source project should have. Then, like, it's also very important to ensure that there are proper reviews in the project. That is because, like, if somebody would like to inject some harmful code to the project, they should not be allowed to do that directly into the main branch. So these kind of things are also like all very important from the security posture point of view of the project. And we started to like collect these kind of things, and we yes. So and we collected these factors that I listed in the slides. I don't want to go through them one by one, but that we collected a couple of these properties of the projects. And yeah, there are even more. And then we realized that there is an open source project called OpenSSF Scorecard, which is already checking for this. So if you, Scorecard is basically a command line tool. If you give a repo URL to this tool, it will analyze the open source project based on these operability risks and give you a score. And you can get even like a detailed explanation what is the result of the scoring. So it provides a very good overview of all of these operability risks. Also, Google provides a big data database of, I think it's like 1 million projects, so it's a huge number of projects. You can query them, query the results from a big data database. So in theory, you do not need to rerun Scorecard for the same projects. Again, just exactly the same problem what Philip mentioned, just for Scorecard and not for Scancode. But you can get the results from a database. So that's also like a very good help. You can reuse that. It mostly supports GitHub, but now they also introduced support for GitLab. One of the drawbacks of Scorecard is that it do not support like all the possible ecosystems where code is developed, and it is not even really possible because there are projects which are, I don't know, handling their issues in Jira, or others are handling their issues in I don't know, some other tool. So it's like an infinite problem to solve this. But with GitHub and GitLab support, like I think the two biggest ecosystems are mostly covered. And we started to build a vision. How do we utilize Scorecard? And we came to this conclusion that we will have Scorecard in the middle, and then we have a wrapper. The reason of having the wrapper is that we have slightly different opinion than the Scorecard contributors on some of the things what Scorecard checks. So we are mutating a bit the Scorecard results. And the other reason is that there are a couple of checks in Scorecard which are failing for most of the open source projects. So if you would like to use the Scorecard results as they are to select which open source projects do we consume, we would not be able to consume, like, I don't know, 90% of the projects what we are using. So some of the changes what we have in the wrapper is, I don't know, watering up a bit the Scorecard checks to, let's say, a level which allows us to really use it to select open source components. Then, but this is still, even the wrapper is a command line tool. So Nokia, we have like a Nokia open source component selection tool. People have to install it and they are running it against their open source components. But it's still command line and we do not have a cache. So that's the plan for the following year, to build a database for the results. So this is the database in the right side. Also to utilize the big data set from Google. So we would not rerun the Scorecard if something is in the database in the left side. We would just like fetch the results and store them into the right side database. And we would like to introduce a service with an API. So the results would be accessible for CI/CD pipelines and also our open source compliance tooling, because what we are, the structure what we have in Nokia is that the R&D teams have like very big freedom in their tooling and their technologies. So not all of the CI/CD tools are the same in Nokia. So it's not possible to provide like just one integration to a CI/CD pipeline and that would just filter out the non-selected open source components. But we need some kind of like a final frontier, and that is our open source compliance tool where everybody have to upload their response, and it has a policy engine. So the policy engine would check via the API if all the components are matching the filter criteria set by the Scorecard. Yes, of course it is not ready yet. So where are we now is the non striped part of this figure. So we have the scorecard. We even put some contributions back to scorecard, which let's say are good for the common good, and we have the Nokia specific changes in the wrapper, and we are now trying to figure out which parts of these changes are generic enough that we can contribute back to scorecard upstream. And we are working on the service implementation. So we are now designing how the API should look like and how to build the architecture. We have an internal team who are building tooling for the open source compliance and for the vulnerability compliance, and this team is working on this service now. So this is very nice, and it was like a nice way to make our products secure and all of that, but the plot thickens because with CRA, which is the European Cyber Resiliency Act, we will need to do a thing what is called due diligence on all open source components what we consume, and due diligence is basically checking these things or some of the things what Scorecard checks. There is no clear and crisp definition what this due diligence means, and that is for two reasons. One is that the CRA is released, or I don't know what's the correct term for that, but it is out there now. But there are standards called harmonized standards which are defining the details in the CRA. So that is still ongoing. And also, even it might happen that when the harmonized standards are out, we will not have all the details in this level. So it's practically an interpretation if Scorecard matches the requirement from CRA or not. Our interpretation is that it does. But I think main point or main takeaway from here, if you are selling products in Europe, you should look into something like this. And it should be very scalable because you have to run it on all the open source components what you are consuming. Yes, and of course there is an evolution path for Scorecard, and there are different alternatives. I just wanted to show them to have some kind of a diversity in the slides. So there is the open source security baseline, which is another OpenSSF project. It is a bit more formalized check of this kind of operability risk, and the baseline is really like addressing CRA requirements or other policy related requirements, and it will give you a result based on this, for example, CRA requirements, if the project is matching the CRA requirements or not. There is another alternative which is called Gilmore Lab. It is a generic tool to analyze different properties of open source projects, but it can create you metrics which would be okay to do the due diligence check for CRA. So it is not an OpenSSF project. It's a totally different set of persons who are doing that, but it is an open source tool. You can install it, you can try it out, and think about using that. The last option is Minder, which is now an open source project. It was developed by Stacklock, and they donated it to OpenSSF. It is not only checking the operability risk, but it has basically a policy engine which enforces security settings. Like you can, for example, define in a YAML file that whenever a new repo is created in an organization, there must be branch protection rules. There must be security policy. So you can define this in Minder, and Minder will create issues and harass the maintainers until they are not compliant with the rules there. But Minder can also create your reports. So you can use Minder as a proof, like creating proof that the project has a certain like level of risk management for security. Yes, this is what I wanted to tell. I hope I was fast enough. Are there any questions or comments?
Thanks. So you're already enforcing this in every new development? So every time you add a new dependency somewhere, you have some baseline for the scorecard that needs to be met?
Not yet fully. So we have an iterative introduction. So now we are using the selection criteria for all the newly added top-level dependencies. But within 2 years, when the CRE will be enforced, we have to have full coverage. So now we are increasing the coverage, and we will use it for more and more. This is why we will need the database to cache the results, because otherwise it's not possible to like on-demand check everything, especially that in GitHub there is a very heavy throttling on the API, so it takes a while to get the results.
Thank you very much. I was wondering if the tools and the best practices you just shared, are they enforced in some kind of policy, or is this a best practice at Nokia?
They are enforced in a policy. So they are part of the Nokia product creation process. So they need to follow that.
Maybe kind of a follow-up question to the one before that. If you now transitioning from looking at the top-level dependencies to doing full coverage, do you have any expectation on how much you will find abandoned projects deeper down in your dependencies and how you want to deal with it? Maybe fork all of these and take maintenance over? Or is this something that you're still don't have thought about or don't want to think about?
No, we don't want to think about it. No, we are thinking about it. We don't want to fork and take over everything what we use, because then like using open source like loses its meaning. We would like to work together with the communities to make the projects better in this perspective.
On the policy part, do you have any policy engine or ideas on what you would be able to use to apply policies as code, or inspire us with the ideas that you already had?
We have an internal open source compliance tool, and that has a policy engine, but that's a closed source implementation. Sorry. But Minder has, so it
So I've been doing a little bit of work in the same space, and a few days ago there was this talk by the Zendesk team about open code badges, and my impression was that basically most of the work is now being superseded a little bit by these badges, because they apparently contain a lot of analysis of open code repositories, and which could be probably implemented or adapted outside of their open code repository. Are you aware of that project? And if so, how do you think about it?
Unfortunately, I'm not aware of those projects, but I would be happy to discuss after the Q&A session. I'm interested in these kind of things.
Cool. Thank you, Gergely.
Thank you very much.